Good morning and welcome to this special segment, News at 9 from Australian Indian Radio and brought to you by Chentex Multimedia Live Streaming Services. Hey, wonderful to have your company once again. And today is once again a bit of a cloudy day out there in Brisbane. Still looking very good out the window here from where we are in this studio. The view outside is just magnificent. So it is 13 degrees and cloudy today. Once again, welcome to the show. We have so much to get through today. But today, as we know, everyone had the news yesterday. And it is very sad. Dalip Saheb is no more. So we'll pay a tribute to him and look at, all the things that he has done and he has given this industry. So he was born as Muhammad Yusuf Khan in Peshawar, which was in Pakistan, December 11. And of course, we know he became the pioneer, Mughal Azam, in over 60 films in 6 decades. Family relocated to Bombay in 1930. It was Devika Rani who believed that Yusuf was destined to be a star and gave him the first break. With a new name and salary of rupees 1,250, he debuted with Jawar Bhatta in 1944. He did come out of Juggling 1947 opposite Noor Jahan. That changed the game. By the 1950s, Dalip Kumar was starring as the biggest film opposite Bollywood's most dazzling girls. Saheb, Mela, Andaz, Devdas, Madhumati, Mughal Azam brought him immense success. But the tragedy brought little clinical depression. Dalip Kumar turned to comedy for help. He won Filmfare's Best Actor Award for 1954 for Daag, and won many awards. Went in to win 8 more times, a record that he now only shares with Shah Rukh Khan. Dalip Kumar was awarded Dada Saheb Phalke Award in 1994. Padma Bhushan in 1999. And he received Pakistan's highest civilian award as well, and a definite Devdas titled Legend. Dalip Kumar will always be Indian cinema substance and its shadow. So there you are, ladies and gentlemen, a tribute to the legend, and of course we know that he will be missed, as we always remember and will always remember him. He will always be there in our hearts and on the silver screen, and now on the screens in your own homes as well. So he is that popular. Well, let's take a look at in this very short segment, because at 10 o'clock we have the travel update with Tanvi Goyal from Oz India Travel. Of course, today is the launch of Kuopio, Queensland's India Day Fair poster launch that's happening tonight, and tomorrow we'll be able to disclose to you what the poster looks like. So, and it is looking amazing. Ooh, I could give you a sneak peek, but now I'll be in trouble. After the poster launch, it will be made public, and everyone will have a chance of looking at the poster, which is a very special design. New poster, new venue, a new format. So it is the turning point, as they reckon that, change is the only constant in life. So, exciting times ahead. Well, right now, let's take a look at what are the current COVID conditions in Australia.
Greater Sydney's lockdown has been extended as the highly infectious Delta strain of COVID continues to spread within the community. Stay-at-home orders affecting more than 5 million people were due to be lifted at midnight this Friday. They will now continue for at least another week. Schools in Greater Sydney will shift to online learning for week 1 of term 3. Students in regional schools will be able to return to face-to-face learning. The reason for the lockdown extension, health authorities are concerned about the high number of people in the community while infectious. The state recorded 27 local cases today. Only 13 were in isolation for their entire infectious period. They flagged 3 areas they're particularly concerned about in Sydney's southwest. They are the Fairfield, Liverpool and Canterbury Bankstown local government areas. It's here we're being told to brace for a rise in cases.
Pretty much all of the cases we're seeing from southeastern Sydney are now in isolation, so we're pretty confident the virus isn't spreading in that community. But we have seen overnight some concerning statistics on what is happening in the Fairfield, Canterbury Bankstown and Liverpool council areas. And can I please say to the communities in those areas, many of them have a similar background to me, please don't mingle with family. I mean, I haven't seen my parents since the lockdown started. It's hard. But can I just say to everybody, please don't mingle with family. Don't think it's okay to go and visit your cousins. Don't think it's okay to have sleepovers. Please, in those 3 local government areas, limit your movement. I mean, the New South Wales government doesn't want to go to the next stage, but we are even considering if there are any further actions we need to take in those 3 local government areas.
And in what the New South Wales Chief Health Officer described as a wake-up call to younger people, 14 of the 37 patients in hospital with COVID are under the age of 55, including 1 person in their 30s in ICU. While New South Wales is holding firm on its lockdown for now, restrictions in Victoria will be rolled back further from Friday, with the state marking a week without any new local cases. Masks will no longer be mandatory indoors for office or factory workers or in schools, and density limits in Melbourne will come into line with regional Victoria. While in Queensland, there's been 1 new local case of COVID. That person was in home quarantine and lives in the same house as 2 others who had already been diagnosed. Restrictions, including compulsory mask wearing, remain in place in several council areas across Queensland until Friday the 16th of July.
So the Friday the 16th, not tomorrow, so don't forget that those restrictions are in force until Friday the 16th, and of course New South Wales going into another week to take into account and prepare, make sure, as the Premier said, that she hopes that it will be the last one for them to do. And as we have seen, the easing of restrictions in Victoria, and yesterday we had from Boris Johnson the easing of restrictions in London or England. So it is a time when, time for change, a time for change of the thought that, we need to learn to live with it but taking into account all the security and safety measures that need to be observed. So it's something that, we need to make part of the life and keep moving on. So that might be the case. So, let's take a look at this extension in New South Wales in detail.
It's not the news she wanted to deliver, but the Premier insists there's no other way.
What we want to do is give us our best chance of making sure this is the only lockdown we have until the vast majority of our citizens are vaccinated.
So the lockdown will be extended for another week.
This is really a crunch time for the community, where the destiny is in your hands.
For some, it's a heavy weight to bear.
I feel despondent now. I think we were all looking forward to getting let out.
I think it's good that it's extended. It hasn't really got under control yet.
The lockdown will continue for not only Sydney, but the Blue Mountains, Wollongong, Shell Harbour and the Central Coast as well.
The Central Coast has been a good performer and we shouldn't be penalised as a result.
There hasn't been too many cases around here, so I think probably, yes, they shouldn't have been included.
Students won't return to face-to-face classes in Greater Sydney next week. Those outside the lockdown in regional areas will, but the tight restrictions there will remain.
Whilst the virus at the moment isn't in regional New South Wales, which is a great thing, we need to make sure it stays that way.
There are 27 new cases. 9 of those, the source is unknown. Only 13 were in isolation while infectious. The rest were out, potentially spreading the virus. And there's concern that's happening in the Fairfield, Canterbury, Bankstown and Liverpool council areas. The message for people there is to stay home. It's a blow for local businesses.
I'm going to lose this work because of all the lockdowns.
This is the second lockdown in 6 months for the Northern Beaches.
Now having to redo it all again, I'm really afraid that we're going to be doing a lot of damage to our business.
The government says it's tried to balance the health of the community with the needs of the economy. But today's decision is undeniably devastating for businesses. So much so, the state is pleading with the Commonwealth for more income support.
New South Wales has really carried the burden in terms of economic activity, and now if we need extra support, I hope it's there.
We're not about to bring back JobKeeper. That was an emergency support payment that had an initial time frame.
The time frame has passed, but the time of need has not. Ashley Raper.
That's exactly right. Their time of need has not passed yet because, many is in the small business sector, all the small to medium-sized sector have survived just because of job. And as was mentioned in that report, that the JobKeeper has ceased, but the need for it has not. So that is a debate that's in there, because if you look at many areas that the government puts money in, and there are certain areas which vastly go out to the community and to the people in need directly, but many others just get gobbled up into the system. Well, right now, looking at the life, what it would be like after this lockdown.
I think at some stage, if the individuals that we need don't hear Dr. Chan's message and don't respond, then at some point we're going to move to a stage where we're going to have to accept that the virus has a life which will continue in the community. But we're trying damned hard at the moment to make sure that we can use every effort to suppress that virus. And right now is a critical time. We've used that expression a number of times, but I can't tell you, as Health Minister, just how critical it is at the moment, particularly for the community in southwest Sydney, Canterbury, Bankstown, Fairfield and Liverpool, to understand that your actions, your individual actions, may well determine the future of this virus in our community. Please listen.
So, as has been mentioned, that we will need to begin to say. So, but when we look at the debate from both the sides, why is it such a political fight still going on?
Quarantine facilities are nothing new for Australia. This is the former North Head Quarantine Station in Sydney. It opened back in 1828 and ran all the way through until 1984. Even by today's standards, the layout is relatively sophisticated. The intention was to protect initially the colony from contagious disease arriving by ship. It grew and evolved over time, but remained largely effective. So why is it that almost 200 years later, Australia is locked in a political fight about how to handle quarantine?
Well, it's pretty clear under the Constitution and history of government in Australia that the federal government has responsibility for quarantine.
The National Cabinet took a decision early on in the crisis that it would be a shared responsibility, and that was a sensible decision which recognised that only state governments employ the public sector workforces that could ever man a national quarantine system on any scale.
They have, throughout this whole pandemic, played games, played politics, undermined us. This has all been about trying to deflect blame onto the states.
Kirsty Alfredson is an Australian citizen and a school teacher in Kent, where she's raising her family.
My dad's 83. He's got bone cancer and blood cancer, and was having chemo. I feel like I need to help my parents. That's my main motivation for getting back, is that I just want to see my family. I want to see my father, I want to see how he's faring.
Kirsty, a former journalist, has been planning her trip back to Brisbane since early this year. While she's been waiting to hear if she can travel tomorrow, Australia has decided to radically reduce the number of overseas arrivals it will accept each week.
I'm an Australian citizen, I've got an Australian passport, I'm fully vaccinated, I've got a letter from the doctor saying that my father has bone cancer and could I please have special consideration. So if I can't get into Australia, I'm not sure who can.
As the Delta variant popped up in multiple locations across Australia over the last few weeks, it's brought to a head months of simmering tensions between the states and the Commonwealth over who is responsible for quarantine arrangements and protecting Australians from the virus.
Imagine if a year ago, at least, the Commonwealth started looking at how we could have either greater capacity for hotel quarantine in more purpose-built facilities, and it just never happened because they took the view that it was the states managing this.
States do need to take responsibility for their areas of responsibility.
To understand how we got here, it's worth going back to the start of the pandemic. With community transmission running away from authorities, National Cabinet agreed that international arrivals would be required to spend 2 weeks in hotel quarantine.
These arrangements will be in place and they are mandatory.
The states implemented hotel quarantine and issues were apparent from the start.
A worker at a Melbourne quarantine hotel is among 8 people who've tested positive since yesterday.
2 separate breaches in Victoria at the Ridges and Stamford quarantine hotels triggered a deadly second wave of infections across the state. In August, it was Sydney's turn, with breaches at the Marriott Hotel. In October, former Health Department head Jane Holton delivered a review recommending alternate quarantine facilities be considered. While the federal government has since expanded numbers at its Howard Springs facility from 850 to 2,000, it didn't follow the Holton recommendations to use defence bases or immigration detention centres.
Many of the recommendations made by the Holton Review unfortunately couldn't be implemented. Our immigration detention facilities are at capacity at the moment because we're not in normal times. We can't deport someone whose visa has expired.
Up to the start of June this year, there were some 352,000 people through Australia's hotel quarantine system, and of almost 4,000 positive cases detected in quarantine during that time, there were 21 breaches, sparking multiple lockdowns. Labor's Katie Gallagher chairs the Senate COVID Committee, set up to provide oversight of the government's handling of the pandemic.
No one.
So the government's handling of the pandemic, and of course we know that we are not only fighting just the pandemic but also this political divide. Well, of course, as we know, federals and states said the responsibility, it's a shared responsibility, but the blame game still continues as who's to be blamed and who has to be, taking account of what's happening and taking that responsibility, and that is very, very important. Well, right now we'll go to the, our neighbours, our island nation of Fiji, and of course there is a very serious outbreak there as well. And we'll try and connect with Dr. Rajeshwar Singh, the Fiji Public Service Association General Secretary. Let's see if we can connect with him.
Friends, neighbours, and families alike, because vaccines are highly effective in preventing COVID-19. Millions of people have safely been vaccinated all over the world. We need people to get vaccinated to get Fiji's economy back on track. There is no cost to get the vaccine. It is free. As a responsible citizen of this country, it becomes your duty to get vaccinated and make our country COVID-free. Do not listen to those who are giving wrong information against vaccination. Science has proven beyond doubt that the only way the coronavirus fight can be won is through vaccination, together with the observation of all other essential protocols.
So there you are. That's the news coming from Fiji. As we know that it has recorded about 700 cases, which is quite a astounding number, especially for Fiji. Well, right now, locally here, what's happening, we've got the government, but, it is also the community's responsibility as well to do its share as well. And so the business community. So here's where Bunning is offering to act as a vaccination centre.
Another day, another meeting. The government and military, this time joined by big business.
This is very much a Team Australia moment.
The CEOs of the nation's biggest corporations are keen to help, with some offering to vaccinate their own staff on site, others offering their workplaces as community vaccination hubs.
Including from Wesfarmers that raise the opportunities that could be provided at your local Bunnings or at your local office works.
But are medical clinics in Bunnings car parks really what's needed? It's more an optional extra than a necessity.
There is a very strong backbone based on GPs, Commonwealth hubs and state hubs. These will be additional options that people will have.
It's a thought for what might happen later in the year when more supplies of Pfizer and Moderna vaccines arrive.
Business can't assist with the vaccine rollout if the government hasn't secured the vaccines in the first place.
In the meantime, companies are willing to help with communications, with some letter writing foreshadowed.
Businesses will write to all their workers about the importance of being vaccinated.
And ideas for incentives are being tossed around.
Airlines were talking about free frequent flyer points and other benefits, for example.
There's no rush, though.
But again, I think that's for a time later in the year.
A business roundtable isn't a vaccine rollout. It's a PR exercise.
The veneer of a military mission and all its wargaming hasn't been able to conjure a solution to the biggest roadblock the vaccine rollout is facing, the need for more Pfizer doses. South Korea has procured extra Pfizer vaccines from Israel, and Canada is getting more doses from the US, but the federal government hasn't been able to strike those kinds of deals.
With Australia's position having very successfully, compared to many other countries, suppressed the virus, we didn't receive as much as other countries in more emergency situations were.
The nation a victim of success or of complacency, depending on your perspective.
And it is all about perspective, which side do you look at? Are we successful? And that's why we are on the top, and other countries have had the priority because they were considered, high risk and low economy countries. Well, right now, as we know, Australia, when we look at our First Nations people, and there has been progress made in retaining their culture and the awareness to the wider community as well. A lot of work has been done, but still not enough, because a lot still needs to be done to change the mindset of the wider community, but also within the community itself. So many times when we look at many different cultures and traditions and people within those cultures and traditions, when they go out and watch everything happening on a wider scale into the wider community, how do they feel? Do they belong? Do they feel that, their community is doing everything? Or are some people actually ashamed of being part of a community? So that, the onus there lies on the elders of those communities to pass on the cultural values onto the upcoming generations.
A lesson in ancient traditions. Local elder Gabby Duncan is teaching these young men about the ceremonies and songs of the Darkinjung people.
This is a cleansing ceremony as such, but it also pays respects to this country and those ancestors of these lands too.
It's hoped reconnecting these troubled teenagers with their Indigenous culture and history will steer them towards a better life.
We're trying to take them back to the motherland, take them back and learn culture for them and show them that culture is still alive.
It's often difficult for Aboriginal kids growing up in the city to feel connected to country.
It was a new experience for me because I never got to do something like that
like at school and stuff, they never spoke about cultural.
The Nalia program is run by the Regional Youth Support Services on the New South Wales Central Coast. It aims to be a circuit breaker to keep Indigenous kids out of detention.
I haven't heard of any programs really. That's why I was getting in trouble, because there was nothing to help me get out of it.
Currently, Indigenous young people make up about 50% of those in youth detention, despite making up just 5% of the population. This means they are 17 times more likely than non-Indigenous teenagers to be in detention.
It's what you make of it, though.
John Russo-Patterson found this program as a struggling teenager. At 17, he was homeless, a single dad, and in trouble with police.
It taught me everything. Taught me how to cook, clean, put me in a house, had a roof over my head, gave me a rental history.
Now he's working to help kids who wind up in situations like his.
Ask for help, because there's always someone that's lived it, done it, and will guide you.
A helping hand needed now more than ever. Kirsty Wellauer, ABC News.
And isn't that wonderful? Because, when you look at those kids, and if you look at the percentage, 5% of the population, 50% of the youth detainees. So, those numbers are alarming. And I think whatever is being done is wonderful. And we, through Queensland Multicultural Council, support those kind of moves and will try and facilitate, with the Indigenous elders and having an understanding or memorandum of understanding with some of the elder groups and trying to bring them out. As you have seen from that report, that there are many youngsters within those communities who probably are not connected to their culture because they have been living in the cities and looking at the ways and means of other cultures. Not saying that other cultures are bad or anything like that, but you still need to respect your culture, and the only way the respect will come is if you understand, if you have a proper understanding of your own culture first. So, which is wonderful that those kind of initiatives are taking place. So, ladies and gentlemen, that's about all we have for you in this short segment. Don't forget that we are back at 10 with the travel updates today. And yesterday was the real estate update with Usha Chandra. Today we'll have Tanvi Goyal of Oz India Travel at 10 a.m. right here in these studios, giving us an update of what can be done, what options are available to us under the current circumstances. As we know, the theme now is look local. So, that is the theme that Gopia Queensland will be taking when they launch the India Day Fair tonight. So, ladies and gentlemen, it's wonderful having your company in this short segment. So, we'll leave you with a message from our sponsors.
GlobeNet Realty. GlobeNet Realty has been the longest established, trusted and respected agency in its trade area. Washa Chandra, Director of GlobeNet Realty, provides honest and ethical service to her customers. If you are thinking of investing in Brisbane real estate market, or if you are seeking professional property management, then you should contact Usha Chandra today on landline 3865 4466 or mobile 0419 775 416. And for further updates, log on to our website www.globenetralty.com.au. GlobeNet Realty is your own local real estate agency. Situated at Shop 5228 Sandgate Road, Boondall. GlobeNet Realty. Real estate is our world.